One of the couple of topics I want to talk about first is you Calumet in the harbor. As you know, in the 70s and 60s and 80s, we had two high schools,
Right.
East Chicago, Washington, and Roosevelt. 86, the schools came together. Been a lot of talk about favoritism to the West Calumet athlete, far as on the roster of the basketball team. Give me your perspective on your feelings on that from the critics who say Todd was favoring the Calumet athlete.
You know what? I can say honestly, I never seen it. I never seen it. It's being talked about now, when there's no Harbor Calumet beef like it was back in those days. It was bringing the school together was a good idea. It was a good idea. I think the timing and the planning of it was what was off. I think in those situations, I believe Todd liked it a score. I think what guys get mixed up is the difference in between liking and loving an athlete. Todd liked and loved anybody that can score the ball. Coach Adele liked whoever can defend the ball. So you had two bulls going head to head with each other between Todd and Adele. And I'd say this all the time. I love Coach Adele. Coach Adel's favorite player on my team was Wayne Jones, because Wayne was a lockdown defender. Wayne can defend. Coach Todd loved me because I can score the ball. But it didn't mean that Adele didn't try to give me what it was he can give me defensively, and it wasn't the same thing that Coach Todd wasn't going to give Wayne what he can give him offensively. And I think that's what people see as far as a teeter-totter, as far as favoritism, and that's how they put it in their own perspective. That's the easiest way for them to make a compliment. But I lived in the harbor all my life. Like I told y'all, I lived in the harbor from my 4th grade year all the way through my senior year. My mama didn't move back to Calumet into the projects until I was 2 years into college already. That's when my mama moved back to the projects. But I don't see it, and I'm not naive to it. I'm not blind to it. I didn't see it. I think what happens in those situations is that is people's way to say that Coach Adele should have been the head coach versus Coach Todd, or Bo Red should have been the head coach.
Should he have been the head coach? Coach Adele over Todd? Because what I'm getting a lot from a lot of athletes, former athletes, present athletes now, they say that Todd wasn't a great coach. He was the players' coach.
He was a players' coach.
But he wasn't a X's and O's coach.
He wasn't an X's and O's guys. But I think any coaching staff, Phil Jackson wouldn't have been as good as Phil Jackson is without his assistants.
Ted Winter and all them guys.
All those guys. Phil Jackson didn't come up with what the Lakers run or what the Bulls ran. He didn't come up with that. But it was his assistants that was around him. All coaches say is that we only as good as our weakest link. That means from 1 through 12. We only as good as it's the same thing as a team on the coaching staff. Gotcha. You got to bring what he's not good at, somebody else got to be good at. What I'm not good at, I need somebody around me that's good at it. Barack Obama can't run this world this country by himself. He need good people around him. So would it have been a difference if Adele was the coach and Todd was the coach? Maybe so. I think Adele would have preached defense more often or more so than Todd did. Todd was an offensive-minded coach. So I thought him hiring Adele would have brought that defensive mentality to the team. So if you got a 2-hour practice, you spend an hour on working on defense, you spend an hour working on your offense. That's how we do now. We got a coaching staff that I would die for. Abe is our head coach. He's our leader. He's the guy that oversees everything. Chris Woods is an assistant. He's a great individual developer. He developed kids. He teaches them the game of basketball. They look for me for the X's and O's. I put down plays. I run what I need to run to get us to get the ball in the basket. I'm a defensive-minded coach. We got Antoine Brown. another defensive-minded guy that's from East Chicago. All those guys, all us collectively, we got Ike Washington that just joined our staff this year as our freshman coach. All these guys bring different aspects to our basketball team, and collectively, as a coaching staff, we put all that together to try to ultimately make our kids better basketball players.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned in your senior year, you said your team wasn't mentally tough enough.
Right.
Is that because of our upbringing as athletes, or is that coaching?
It goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. We were physically tougher than Valparaiso. Physically, we were tougher than Valpo. When we stepped on the court, if we ever had to get in a brawl, we would whoop them, literally, because we were physically tougher than them. But being able to deal with the mental aspects of the game, we wasn't taught. That's why I just made a point to you. We'd have been mentally tough if Coach Todd had taken us to Indianapolis, or taken us to play Lafayette Jeff, or taken us to play in some hostile environments, or in some situations where everything wasn't going to go our way.
Gotcha.
It was rough going over to Gary Wallace or going over the West Side, playing at Gary Work, but it still was our area. It was nothing like going to Indianapolis to play against an Indianapolis school, or the furthest we went my senior year was to play in Kokomo, and we won that game in Kokomo under some controversy. But we were just satisfied with the win. We didn't find out what we could have learned from that win to help us later on down the line. And if we had we probably would have had a better outcome in that Lafayette semi-state game. Not to point the finger at anybody. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but at some point in time, at 17, 18 years old, you have to learn. You have to learn for yourself, as well as coaches continue to reiterate it. There's a saying that I tell all our critics, everybody that got something negative to say. We have an open door policy. If you want to come and give your input, we have no squanders with that. You can come, you can give your input, you can say what it is you want to say. But don't say that we're not teaching it. It's three things to teaching it. You can teach it, the kids have to learn it, and then the kids have to apply it. It starts with us as coaches teaching it. Then the kids have to learn it, and then they have to go out on the court and apply it. So that's what I try to tell our guys now. Listen, we're doing what we're supposed to do by teaching these kids what it is they need to know. We're trying to teach our kids so they can get to that next level and be successful at it. Now, it's up to them to learn what it is that we're teaching it, and it's up to them to go out on the court and apply it. Don't get no simpler than that, Carl.
So who's the better coach? Because you've been involved in EC basketball from day one. You was a player, and you've been coaching for 12 years.
Yes.
Todd, Miles, Turkovich, Abe.
You know what? I came into coaching under Coach Miles. After Coach Miles left, I learned something from every last one of these coaches that I've been under. I learned something, and I commend every last one of them, because they all had the number one goal was the betterment of our kids, and all of them had that in their heart. All of them had that in their heart. So I learned that from every last one of them. I learned the business aspect of coaching from Coach Miles. Coach Miles was a very business-oriented man. Whether he was friends with you or whether he didn't like you, he was always cordial. He was always respectful. I learned that aspect of him as far as a business aspect of the game of basketball. I learned that from him. He was the first coach in East Chicago history to ever take a basketball team outside of the state of Indiana to play. We went to Vegas 3 years in a row with Coach Miles, just to give our kids a whole different outlook of what the game of basketball was outside of the state of Indiana. He gave us that opportunity. Turkovich came in here. Turkovich was a good individual coach. He was a guy that shooting, being able to push the ball up the floor. Turkovich was an offensive-minded guy. He was an offensive-minded guy. I learned a lot. Offensive sets, offensive drills, shooting drills. I learned a lot of that type of stuff from Coach Turkovich. Working for him for those 2 years, it was rough because it was a transition period between somebody that gave me a start versus somebody that was coming in here with a total different new idea. Learned a lot from Turkovich offensively wise. Now it's Abe, and see, the reason why Abe is a great head coach now is because the same thing that I was learning, Abe was on those two staffs too, so he learned those things too. So now collectively, he's taking what he learned from Miles, he's learning what he's taking from Turkovich, and the coaches that he played for, and Coach Todd. He learned all those things, and now he's bottling it up, and he's going to produce what it is that he can do. That's why Abe, if we have practice, Abe is observant. He's very observant. Abe will sit back and he'll watch the first 30 minutes of practice before he even opens his mouth. He'll allow myself, Chris Woods, Coach Brown, Coach Washington to get our input in, and then he collectively come back and bring all that we have put in collectively. He bring that all back together coming from him, because we sit down and we have a coaches meeting before we come out on the court every day about what it is we're going to specify today, what are we going to go over, who is our next opponent, what we need to do to make ourselves successful on the court. Abe is a laid back guy, man. He's a laid back guy. He loves these kids. He do something for these kids that a lot of coaches wouldn't do. Abe bend over backwards for all our kids, man. Every kid in our program, he bend over backwards from fixing them pre-game meals. There's nothing for Abe to go home and cook up some spaghetti or masticholi and bring it back for these kids to have a pre-game meal. Go in his pocket, make sure every kid got a tennis shoe, make sure every kid got a skull cap on their hat so we can't have no illnesses, make sure a kid got a coat on their back. Collectively as a coaching staff, that's the type of things that we do. We try to teach our kids, one, to be young men, represent where you come from, have a great positive attitude, and whatever you do, you always got to play hard. That's our motto.